Quickest way to give feedback on everyone's work on assignment 2 and allow everyone to see what everyone else has done and the comments on them for some combined learning would be to use this video. This one is a follow-up from a previous attempt, which I thought was much better. I'm wondering why Einstein apple, an apple genius equals an M&M breaking out of something and a wave and looks like a postage, looks like an envelope because you usually have a square up there to represent where you put the stamp. So those are the symbols that I know, Apple Genius and stamp and a wave. As you can see in the lower left, what it's supposed to be, all the symbols are there, but the arrangement of them and the meaning they have together as a whole doesn't equal at the bottom. We are very familiar with this. Well, there may be some people, I ask a lot of my students, do you know what the Wizard of Oz is? And some of them have not seen the movie. And so they may not understand that. That is the foursome. I don't know where Toto is, the little dog. They're going toward Emerald City. And we have Dorothy there. It's all in color because I know from the movie it's supposed to be in color, but it's black and white. The only thing in color are the people. And she's thinking an emerald rainbow question mark. At the very bottom, I can barely see what it says. It says color affects communication by providing perceptual cues. Okay, that was one of the messages that said you could use. So I'm getting kind of some color cues here, but I think I'm trying to figure out more because of the meaning of the Wizard of Oz and all that, of what it has to do with the Wizard of Oz, than it does that this is a pretty good example of how color can give perceptual clues. It's a good example of that, but I'm not knowing that's what the message is. It's just an example of the message. So what was to actually be said here, I'm trying to solve the clue here because of the question mark. And so this would be great for an article on the Wizard of Oz or something that deals with Emerald City. I know there's a town, there's a city in the country that's referred to Emerald City, and maybe there's some political agenda, something about what's going to happen to the, wizard of the city, 4 members of the city council, and what they're going to be doing for, the Emerald City. I don't know what the message is going to be, but it's a good example of how color is being used here to try to say so. Okay, here we have the next one. And this is a nice mixed media, a nice dimensionality to it, good design, a lot of textures, and I've got a skyline here, school bus, and mortarboards and gowns, so something to do with school or education. And I'm looking at those dotted lines is probably going down the middle of the road. They're kind of funny, not straight, so I'm wondering if it's maybe a pathway and not dividing between the road. So it's like a pathway through the city, but I'm not understanding why it's divided, the lower from the top. Let's see if we scroll down here. Job-seeking graduates face tough road ahead. Okay. The school bus threw me off because that's elementary school, maybe secondary school, but not college. People don't go to college in a bus like that, so that's why that sign is kind of throwing me off. I've got the road, but I don't understand where a rough road is. I can see that the buildings are green and pleasant and all that, and the building in the lower right is maybe Skiwampus, it's not quite colored. Um, I'm not quite sure what sign is trying to say what the rough roads are. Okay. Um, if you have those grads looking down at a road that's converging, you know, to a pinpoint to the horizon, and you can see the road, it's got potholes, maybe trees have fallen over it, other kinds of things that say, wow, that's a tough road. That's much simpler imagery, and there's less for me to try to figure out what it means. Got a road, they're looking down the road, and it's looks kind of tough. The comparison of the way it was before, like it was green, everything was green, and now it's not, I didn't quite get it. But the big thing here that throws me off is the school bus, because that doesn't relate to graduates looking for jobs. Okay, great artwork. Really gets my attention. Several different artistic techniques. It's all one flat, but you could call this mixed medium in a sense. Minimally matte looks kind of like chalk and pastels, or I don't know, but okay, so we know that the environment and the background is plain, not colored, so we're really looking at the two fish, and they be looking at each other, and somehow they're communicating. And so, you know, a great piece of artwork. I think the piece of artwork is saying that the fish are in love, maybe. The fish on the right is in love, the fish on the left is, I don't know. Let's take a look maybe a little bit, see what the author's trying to, the creator is trying to say here. Color affects communication by attracting attention. Well, there's no question about that your attention is attracted because of the colors I mentioned. But I'm not getting that's the message. It's just a great example of the message. That truly, this is a great example that color does affect communication by attracting attention. But I don't know that you're talking about that because I'm not seeing anybody understanding the communication, nor am I seeing a comparison where they're not understanding it, where the difference is because of the color. So maybe you're referring to the fact that the other fish are not colored, and so therefore they're not paying attention to each other. But the extra, I don't know, the fish on the left, all that, I don't know, is that electric coming from them, or you know, attracting attention is one thing, but this is falling in love and emotion, and so there's several levels of meaning here, and that's what we have to be concerned with, it when we pick graphics or we're putting together a presentation of some sort, that we're not getting multiple meanings. Now, this would work great as a piece of artwork in any kind of a layout on a topic about color or attracting attention or being in love or fish or anything like that. And then the words would explain what it means. If the message at the bottom here were a heading on, say, a magazine article, this would definitely attract your attention. You'd read the heading, Color Affects Communication by Attracting Attention. Wow, it really does go together. So, perfect match, great example, could be used as the asset for the topic. But by itself, it doesn't say that because it seems to be telling a different story, and I don't really realize you're talking about communications. And I don't realize you're talking about attracting attention until I read the words. I think I commented on this one in the live class session. This is a good composition, very clean structure. It's not, the repetition is not all perfectly lined up, so it makes it more interesting. But you're looking at the differences, and different facial expressions are drawn, and different colors, and so there's only two variables. They must be associated with each other, so therefore color must somehow affect mood or expression or some reaction. And that's pretty easy to understand. The message says, colors evoke emotions and create powerful moods. Not only is this a great illustration to go along with that message, but I get the message without reading the words because of this simple association. Okay, this next one. In our business, CMYK is almost a word, but they're just letters, and it's an acronym, kind of. And acronyms kind of violate a little bit, but it doesn't matter because they could not be letters. They could be just blobs. It says the same thing. So I'm going to discount that. It's not disqualifying because you're using words or anything of any sort. And I can clearly see that the different colors of ink on the it's very humorous. It's a very good composition. Fun to look at. Attracts my attention. A very good design. I'm going to zoom out here a little bit more. Oh, I haven't seen all of it yet. There we go. Sorry about that. So there we go. Let's zoom out here. It's even more fun to look at. And the message is more complete now. Okay, I've got the signs that are telling me it has something to do with movie or theater. There's lots of those. You got a marquee at the top. You got a stage of some sort there with curtains. And you got the movie strip at the bottom. And so it's kind of clear we're talking about that the CMYK, the colors of inks, you may not know that they're printing inks. It could be artist inks, but whatever. But they're inks of some sort, and they're on stage and they're getting the attention. And we've got yellow, red, and black. I don't see a blue because there is a blue up there and that, but nevertheless. I'm a little confused because, well, I'm thinking, well, why is blue not showing up? Well, maybe it doesn't have to do with each color being represented, but these colors on stage, they are the characters that can put together the presentation. Okay, and I'm trying to. I'm not sure what the message is on this one. If I scroll down here a little bit, it says, oops. I turn it upside down to look at it. It says colors evoke emotions and create powerful moods. Okay, well, that's a good example of that. And again, it's another one that would attract your attention. You could be used for that because it really does do that. But because it's set up in a storytelling fashion, I'm trying to get other meaning from that. So this is an excellent example of how emotions can be, I guess it could be powerful moods. The only thing I see on moods is the different faces drawn on the fingers with ink, and there's a picture in the lower right. Looks kind of a mood, but I don't see the association between them. I just see that what I would say is, hey, basic ink colors have powerful emotions associated with them, and they can combine together with more complex images. That's what it's kind of telling me, some sort. So it's not terribly confusing. Good signs are being used, but there's an awful lot of signs, and the storytelling doesn't quite get me to the conclusion that was meant here. Now, some students have done this. They put together an excellent presentation, and then they say, what does that say? And then they say, that's my message, which is easier to do than to start with a message and then try to create something that says that message. But a different message would be better for the one that was being used here. Okay. Oh, good. Alfred E. Neuman from Mad Magazine. Everyone knows of him. And the second time we've got that Albert Einstein tongue hanging out. That seems to be kind of popular. These are all famous characters, including the cartoon caricature. So we know they're famous people. They've got all kinds of interesting expressions and a bunch of symbols down there that usually represent cussing and swearing. At least the @ sign, the number sign, the exclamation sign. Some of those things are typically used for that. Otherwise, it just looks like a monkey's been on a typewriter. So if it does, if it's just placeholder for copy, but I'm wondering why those particular symbols could have been just a bunch of X's. So I'm thinking because they're different symbols in that, they must have some meaning in it of themselves. Um, but I'm not quite sure what to make of all these characters. It is a great composition. It uses contrast between a large image and all the smaller images. It definitely uses a color. It uses a balance, and so it's a great composition. I'm just trying to think. I don't know what it. I don't have the message here at the bottom. Is it hidden down there? It is. Facial expressions can illustrate a message in ways copy cannot. Aha, great idea here, because that copy is not communicating it. But I don't know that this is not a layout where you got a picture and the copy says the picture. Okay, so in some way, this idea that you have here, that facial expressions can illustrate a message in a way a copy cannot. That is true. I believe that. This would be a great attractive piece on that topic. But I'm not, I'm seeing emotion being conveyed by the facial expressions. I don't know that it's illustrating a message. What is the message it's illustrating? I'm not getting that. So if you had a message that was clearly understood, and then you had a graphic that was trying to represent that message, and then you had the copy next to it trying to say the message, see, by comparing it, now I know that you're comparing the two to what the message is. And so how do you represent a message? The symbol we've used in the past was, you know, just a blank speech bubble is the message, or maybe some guy with a megaphone, you know, like, or a town crier says, "Hear ye, hear ye," you know, something that says message, and people looking at the graphic and people looking at the type, and they're not getting it. And then you can make the conclusion by comparing it. But I didn't see the association. I looked at the type and the graphics is one piece, like a poster, and I didn't understand why the copy was all discombobulated, other than it's meeting the requirement. So a great idea, great symbols, great construction, but not quite directing my attention of what you're trying to say by separating out the two and distinguishing them. This is a tough assignment, I know, but you guys are doing a pretty good job here in coming up with signs that are appropriate. The problem is in bringing together the signs to say something. Okay, video games plus a man or a person does not equal shooting guns. Okay, and I think this is a rebus. I said to avoid rebuses, rebuy, because I don't want you to replace one word with a picture and make it more like a puzzle like that, but trying to integrate them more into a more complex message. The message here is video games don't make people killers. Okay. Video game plus a person does not equal, and actually the circle's a little confusing because when the does not equal sign is the equal sign with a slash through it. Now a slash through a circle means don't. So don't equal. See, so you're making it rebus-like don't equal, don't make, okay? And so a shooter. So I'm not quite sure where you're going with this one. If you, that doesn't represent a killer, for one thing, because nobody's dying. Now in a video game, things actually die, okay? So the idea needs to be a little more refined. I'm not saying this to be critical or to criticize. But, and I'm not trying to make a conclusion that what I'm saying is true about the person who put this together, but it's kind of, we have to avoid the lazy approach by trying to choose images and just assembling them very quickly and expecting everyone to think of them as we think of them without realizing that there could be some other meanings and other construction. I understand what the topic is, but I'm not sure that I get the exact message he's talking about here as specified at the bottom. And it's, if you had a gun by itself sitting on a thing and then you had a person symbol, of course you could say the same thing, but a gun doesn't kill, a person does. The question is, a person with a gun in his hand is not necessarily a murderer. And you could say that because, well, maybe he's shooting at a target. Maybe he's just showing a fine display. Maybe he's just got it there thinking, I can protect myself someday. There's other reasons for that. There's one reason for video games, and you can play lots of different things, but you're not. So I may never play a violent game on my video game, and you're assuming that that's what a video game means to me when it doesn't. To me, I don't really like those shoot-up games. I think they're horrific. And shooting aliens and zombies and that, okay. But real people and blood splattering, it may not make a killer of somebody, but I don't play that. And I don't associate that. You can't assume that everyone is associating that. If that's what you're trying to say, then show a monitor of a violent video game and some guy really playing it. Okay? So the symbols are in the category of what you're trying to say, but they don't mean the same thing to everyone in the audience because they don't mean the same thing as it means to you. Okay? So just, you want to think of dual meanings when you choose your graphics, okay? Now, here is a takeoff of Atlas holding the weight of the world on his shoulder. And this is not just the world itself, but people around the world, different colors holding hands, kind of symbolic of unity and multicultural and stuff like that. So the world is not so much as Adam does, just the physical globe, but the world meaning the people in the world. And so I see the scales of justice, the hammer of justice. And so I'm thinking something about justice and people in the world. And I got a symbol here. When I first looked at it, I thought, this is some sort of Chinese symbol, maybe for, I don't know what it means. But it's a red box with the equal signs in the middle, maybe? I'm not sure what that box and two lines mean. If it's equal, or if it's a double pane window, and why is its location the way it is? It's not centered in the world, it's slightly off-centered. And so I'm just thinking of all these different meanings in here. Now, if this were a piece of artwork, you can see how I'm trying to figure out, what's the artist trying to tell me? What's, you know, it has so many interesting meaning and creates feelings in me. Great piece of artwork. But as a design to communicate a particular message, I'm missing it exactly. But I know what the topic is, at least I think it's something to do with justice and equality around the world. And that might be what it is. And if this were to illustrate a brochure, a company, an idea, some sort of an article on it, an editorial on that topic, it's a great illustration because it brings together those appropriate signs. But in trying to make a comparison or telling a story or laying out the relationships that convey what exactly you're trying to say about that topic, I'm just a little off. Let me go back to this one. I kind of looked it up, what he was trying to say here. The message is, the weight of the world is on the Supreme Court's shoulders to make a decision on equal rights to marry. Ah, boy, was I off. I see nothing here representing marriage. I see nothing here for the Supreme Court. Supreme Court is 9 people in robes. That would represent the Supreme Court. Okay? And just an equal sign does not mean equality. So anyway, the signs here are in the ballpark, but they're not the exact thing. I had no idea. See, I was off. I thought it was closer to it than that. Got buttons. Okay, I don't know right now if the buttons are just to make a line, kind of like the stars, or to make the symbol on the left, or if they have some meaning on here. I can see something to do with military on the left, and comparing that to the peace sign on the right. So I know it's something to do with war and peace, and we're comparing the two. And the peace, very patriotic. Stars are patriotic, at least in this country. Red, white, and blue is patriotic. So peace is a kind of a patriotic thing. Um, so maybe the slash through it would be that it's not patriotic. Now, if it had a circle and a slash, meaning not, um, and then it would be a better design because you got the circle and the peace sign, and then you got the circle of the do not or is not. Um, you know, when I was in high school and the Vietnam War was going on, and the peace sign was a big deal, um, a lot of people said, hey, that's the symbol for the American chicken and want to go to war. You know, the draft dodgers and all that, because it looks like a chicken footprint. So every time I look at it, I kind of think of that. But it's a peace symbol. And so I don't know why buttons. I know there's war and peace, there's bread and butter and guns and butter. That was an expression used to compare the two. Um, Swords into pruning hooks, and you know the difference between the two. So maybe that's what it's saying, but I don't know what buttons mean. I don't know if buttons were just an extra medium to use to do it, or if the buttons themselves had meaning. The stars had meaning, patriotism, but I don't know about the buttons. So I'm just going to assume um, peace, patriotic peace, and um, war, implements of war. Um, how do you make peace with war? Something like that. I'm sure I'm on the topic. They've got good symbols here. It's very clean, good design. In fact, I'm seeing here, okay, I don't know if you can see it in this video, but apparently there are little tiny discs. I don't know. Maybe they're like those that repairs holes in three, you know, the, the, the paper that has three punches, three holes punched in them, and sometimes they tear out, and you repair them with these little discs. Or it could look like it's very flat um, wintergreen lifesavers, but I didn't see that at first because there's not much contrast there. So I don't think that has any symbols to it. So I'm guessing that the buttons and those little discs don't really have anything to do with it. It's just to form a shape. And it's kind of distracting because it doesn't contribute to the meaning. But uh, peace, not war. You're comparing it. Make peace, not war. Peace is patriotic, something like that. And I think I'm getting closer now that I understand this. But I don't know exactly because it doesn't say at the bottom here what it really means. Okay, let's move on to this one. Very clean, crisp, cut, straight cut. Puzzles at the top, puzzles at the bottom, divided into three areas. The two lines divide into three things. So I'm thinking what I'm doing is I'm going through what my mind is perceiving, where it's looking in that. I'm taking this, which happens in a matter of a few seconds, and I'm condensing into where I can take maybe a minute or so to explain. But I am trying to make evaluations of this thing and process all this information and try to make sense of it. But apparently the light bulb and the top of somebody's head and these green puzzle pieces at the bottom are all together. Okay? And so apparently there are puzzle pieces at the top that are red. For some reason, red means something because green is different. Red means stop, green means go. The guy in the middle is, I guess, a transition. Maybe that's his forehead at the bottom. Pieces that are not together at the top that are red. Then a guy, he's just looking. Oh, looks to me like, aha, good sign. His thumb and his forefinger are stroking his chin. If there was more space there to see that, okay, it's almost hard to do that. But representing he's thinking about this, using it, okay? That's an interesting way of looking at it. So he's thinking of those three pieces, and he gets an idea, and he puts them together. Now, there are three pieces to begin with, and five at the end. So I'm thinking, what's the difference between the numbers, and why the colors? Okay, so it's got a nice little story going in here, but I'm not sure what is trying to be said. If I scroll down a little bit, can that work here? Had a problem and whoop, and was puzzled. Then he had an idea, conclusion, to solve it. Okay, I can't say that um, I didn't get that. Puzzle pieces necessarily doesn't mean a puzzle. Um, so, I mean, you know, puzzle pieces, again, it's an easy choice. There are other things that could represent a puzzle, more pieces laid out. But I got the idea that the pieces together, and then he got the idea and he solved it. So I was kind of there. Again, the things that cause you to go off on tangents. Okay, that's a lot of times it's a problem with students in this assignment or when you put together something like this. You throw in all these extra things and get people to go off on tangents. And I kind of went off tangent thinking there's 5 pieces at the bottom and there's 3 at the top. And it changed colors. So if you keep things consistent, same number of colors, but they're not put together, okay? And then the same number in pieces and the same color at the bottom, but they're put together, okay? I tell this a story of a kid who had this complicated puzzle and put it together very easily and said, well, how did you do so quickly? He says, well, I turned it over and it was a much simpler picture on the back and I put that one together and I got the one in the front together. So design is about simple. You want to have minimal information, minimal signs, minimal words to convey what you're trying to say. There's this temptation to put in more or change other things. And the stop and the go, the green, the number changes was a little confusing for me to get the message. But 90% it was there, and great example of telling a story and using good symbols. My favorite was stroking the chin. Great choice of a sign to mean thinking about something. Okay, I see words over here and they shouldn't be there, so I'm going to ignore them. They could be chicken scratchings that represent stuff, and maybe it's just part of the illustration in that, okay? But an old film strip plus a color wheel plus whatever that thing is, equals Technicolor. Okay, this might be explaining to me how Technicolor, which is actually a technology, it was trademarked and it was registered, it was patented, and maybe this is explaining how that works. It looks to me like a color wheel with different, you know, you could spin around and as the light goes through, different colors come out. But I'm not familiar with that symbol, okay? Now I'm going to read the colors. It says film in color improves SMIG 160 with. Okay, so maybe this is just I don't know what it's to represent. Let's see if there's an explanation that goes along with that. Technology improved color with movies since 1916 with the process known as Technicolor. People use Technicolor for a certain amount of things. Format and labs are included too. The reason being because they are used to process and restore film used with color. Invented in America and used to do this very day. Technicolor is a work of fine art for cartoons. So great copy, great cut line, gives me some information, but basically it's trying to say that technology improved color with movies since 1916. Okay, not quite there. Now, I didn't make a big deal about Technicolor, but if the word Technicolor wasn't there, I don't know that that symbol below it means Technicolor, but maybe it does. Seems like the message is geared more toward somebody that would understand the symbols in the industry. Because if you remove the word Technicolor and that symbol below here and the little pinwheel in the lower upper right, I'm not quite sure that we're talking about technology and that it's changing and being improved, because I don't see the way it was before. It's just a film strip. And since you're putting this in a mathematical symbology here, pluses and equals, I'm putting it together in a linear thing, and I'm more comfortable with my conclusion of what it meant the first time around than I did for the second time. Very colorful. Really like this composition. It's a great collage. I'm sure there's more information here than I need, but it's a very exciting picture. Now, in the lower left-hand corner, I cheated because my eye went down there. I think that's the message. Red is exciting, and there's no doubt about that, that red's exciting. That's a great example of how red is exciting. I'm hoping that whoever did this did the composition. It's a pretty good composition, but my eye goes to the 6 and the white area on the card because it's so much lighter and less colored than that. But it's fairly well balanced and good contrast everywhere around. And it's a great example of how red is exciting. But to be honest with you, I can't say that I don't know that you're not talking about red, but I don't know that you're trying to tell me that it's exciting. It's an example that's exciting, but what do I have to compare it to? If I had the same picture and it was all in, say, green, would that be exciting? Or not as exciting? Could I compare and make that conclusion? Would I need another sign to direct my attention to be comparing what has red and what doesn't to know that you're talking about it being exciting? Maybe I don't need to compare. Maybe I just need to have somebody looking at the picture and looking at their reaction, and you can make a conclusion, wow, they're looking at red and they are excited. So red is exciting. But this is just a great example of how red can be exciting, but it doesn't really tell me that, get me to think that that's the conclusion of what you're trying to tell me here. Okay? So, see, the idea behind this assignment is not that you're going to be going around communicating only with pictures, but when you use pictures and when you use visuals to support what the message is, they will be appropriate in adding to what you're trying to say, because type conveys the bulk of the message. And that's what this does. This is an excellent example of that. It's just doesn't stand on its own of conveying the message. Now here we have some words. You can represent the days of the week, I think, without saying the days of the week. So using words, this is on the border here, because how do you show it's a calendar? Well, somehow you got to show it's a calendar. Numerals are okay, but words are not. Unhealthy monthly chart, healthy monthly chart. No, you can't use the words. You have to have some symbols that show healthy and not healthy. Now remove those words and just look at those. I have colors here. Colors start out the same on the left, and the characters are the same on the left. On the right, the colors are different, but the pictures are different. It looks to me like the green half of the guy at the bottom is pretty much, looks like he's got a little bit more meat on him. But the one at the top, the red guy, is definitely more hefty. Okay, so I don't need to know what's healthy or unhealthy. I can see that if you consider that much more weight unhealthy. Okay, that could be misconstrued, because some people think, well, that doesn't look so bad. It's not unhealthy. He's just got more weight than he needs. But the conclusion between the kind of things being eaten during the week makes a big difference. You can clearly say what it's telling me here, that your diet affects your weight. Now, it's a general truth. Everybody knows that, and it's like, duh, but I get it. It can be a simple message. It's not so trite. I wouldn't get it unless you correctly chose this. But you need to get rid of the words and replace them with symbols. Okay? When you've got Sunday through Saturday and 4 lines, that's like a month. Well, how How about put numbers on there? Okay. And you know how that might say better that we're talking about. And you maybe have a symbol. If you don't get that overweight's unhealthy, maybe you can have a symbol that says unhealthy or a symbol that says healthy. Maybe a little chart or clipboard with a checkboard or whatever. I'm not sure you need to add anything more than that. I would remove the words and just make that more clear that that's a calendar without using the words. And I get it, you know. You can gain weight in a month just from a poor choice of diet. Very, very simple picture. I think it's minimally meets the requirement of mixed medium because there's several different materials being used here. I think it's a striking in its simplicity, the design here. Now X marks the spot. That's where you end up, right? Or in this case, because of the arrows, where you start. And I'm looking at that this is, looks like a road maybe, you know, and that's on the horizon. Or maybe it's a mountain. And so all the arrows are going down. Now there's different color arrows and different color materials behind it. So I'm wondering if the colors associated with the different materials. But I'm still not quite sure what to do here, what it's about. Now, this particular example, the explanation of it that was given was, I think, fairly remarkable. Let's see here. Now, the explanation that came with this was quite interesting. The diagram explaining how everything works here. Basically, X is where they start going downhill. Arrows represent all the available paths. They're all pointing downhill. So I wasn't quite sure that that was a hill. It could be. So sometimes just something a little bit different can distinguish this from a hill from a road. So the message was, it's all downhill from here. And so it takes a little while to soak that in. And I can see the reasoning and I can see the thought behind that and the symbols. It got me thinking that, but I wasn't quite sure it was going downhill and that you're talking about, you're basically an expression. What you're trying to do is create what we call a visual pun, where literally it represents what you're saying. Like that ad I told you about where somebody is sitting in a hammock and the hammock looks like a contact lens that's been folded into a banana boat shape. And the guy's in this contact and the headline says, "Been sleeping in your contacts again." It's a visual pun. And so he's got an expression, things are going downhill, or all things are going downhill, or it's all downhill from here. It's a common expression, not as cliche as Lot, but he's trying to represent that almost not necessarily a play on a visual here, but he's trying to represent that with that meaning going down here. So the signs could be just a little bit more clarified so you know what you're doing. And I don't know what everything is because the X, now what says start and what says finish? Okay, racing flags do that, but then that might make me think more of it's a racetrack instead of going downhill. A finish line, something to know, and maybe arrows don't necessarily represent all things, okay, or it's all or everything. It's all downhill from here. If you're on top of Mount Everest or any kind of major peak, and you're at the very top, it's true. It's all downhill from here because nowhere else to go. It's like going to your North Pole. It's all south from here. I just didn't quite see the orientation on the downhill and what you're referring to. But Great idea. Great idea. Maybe the execution could be a little bit better.